If you're a Lume lover, this is a watch that was made for you. And if you've been a watch collector for a while, you'll probably be recognizing this dial. But the rest of it may be looking a little bit different, because it now is. This is the new 40mm version of the Wayfinder from Farr Swit. And if you remember, I reviewed the original 42mm like 3 or 4 years ago. It was a while. But they're now back with this new version that's not only smaller, but has an entirely new case design. One that's not only thinner, but also has an increased water resistance. Now, along with that new smaller 40mm width, lug-to-lug has also been brought down to 48mm, something I'm really glad to see. As looking back, one of my critiques of the 42mm version was that 50-ish millimeter lug-to-lug that it had, because there was a little bit of overhang on my wrist with that one. Whereas this, when it's down to 48, is just about ideal. On my 7¼ inch wrist, it's very comfortable and you can easily wear this one all day. It's also nice to see that even though they've made it thinner, now sitting at 11.5mm, they've tripled the water resistance. Which again is a big step forward. I mean, the original had 100 meters, which realistically is good enough for most people. But at 100 meters, it wound up being more of a dive style watch, where this one, now at 300 meters, you can consider it a true diver. And I should point out that this watch, as well as some of their others, are assembled in the USA, and they specify somewhere in the Midwest. Which is something that I think is always nice to see, and especially from a brand that is really proud to be from Chicago. And I mean proud, just go check out their Instagram. As well as one of their other big sellers is another version of this Wayfinder, where the dial's been changed to show an overhead map of Chicago, including Wrigley Field. And one other big thing to point out, although it's something you probably already noticed, is that the second hand is moving a little funny, shall we say. I mean, it's not a single tick like a Quartz, but it's also not quite as smooth as an automatic. I think it's going about 4 ticks per second. And that's because it's using Seiko's VH31 sweeping quartz movement, which some also refer to as one of Seiko's mecha quartz movements, which is kind of a whole other topic on whether or not that's appropriate. I'm not going to get into it. But back when I reviewed the originals, they actually had an automatic version as well as a sweeping quartz version. And if I think about it, they might have been one of the first companies to really employ this VH31 movement. So it's really interesting to see that they're still using it. I guess it's proved to be a reliable workhorse. Now the downside to this movement is that despite the sweeping or mecha or high beat rate quartz moniker, it is nowhere near as smooth as a precisionist. And it will also chew up batteries faster than a traditional modern quartz movement. I think the average battery life for these VH31s is about 2 years. But on the flip side, it looks cool and solves the misalignment issue most enthusiasts complain about. And before we move on, one quick disclaimer, and that this watch was lent in by Farr Swit to the channel. In fact, they actually remembered my annual Lume video is coming up, and asked if I could review this in time, hoping that it might also make it into that. And it's nice to see a brand remember that I do that annual video. Anyway, let's talk about the Wayfinder. And the big change here is in the case. Not only the specs, but also the design of it. Where it seems to be more sleeker and streamlined than before, which is apparent in the smaller crown guards protecting the screw-down crown. It's also a little more elegant as well. Before it was more of a straight tool watch, where it was all brushed with these larger, more prominent lugs. But now there is a polished chamfer helping to show off its new curves. Now, it's been a while since I reviewed the original, so I don't quite remember how good the finishing was, at least not off the top of my head. But on these, it's quite good. The case is nice and smooth, good grain to the brushing, and I'm impressed with the fit of the end links on the bracelet. It's really nice and tight, which is kind of where the drilled lugs come in handy if you want to change it out. There's also a cool embossed case back, and a great 120-click unidirectional action with the bezel. The action is maybe a little bit stiff, it's kind of my one complaint, but the size of the bezel, the knurling, it makes it really easy to grab, and the clickiness is nice and loud. I also believe that the blue bezel insert here is steel. Now for increased scratch resistance, ceramic would be nice, or even a good sapphire covered one. But at the same time, it would completely change the look, as the deep brushed blue color here matches that of the blue of the dial in the hands, just adding to the cohesiveness of the design. Which brings us to the dial of the Wayfinder, and I don't think it's changed much here. Which in some ways is a good thing because it was really cool before and it still is. Now with this version, the main version, It's not a map of anywhere in particular. If I remember right, it was just kind of made up to look like a cool map. Unlike, say, that Northside edition that I mentioned before, which shows you Wrigley Field. And I have mentioned to them that they really should start looking into making newer versions of other particular locations, like maybe other stadiums in the country. But at the same time, I can kind of understand their hesitation. You have to pick a location that has really loyal fans to help support it. Although, since they are proud Chicagoans, they should at least think about doing one more special edition of Soldier Field. And they can obviously call it the Bears edition. The Bears. Anyway, as you can see, it is a quite complex dial, and I do appreciate that it's not just focusing on lume, but they've also put applied indices here to give it some depth. And with the bright color contrasts here, it is surprisingly easy to read. Now, I do have to say, and maybe this is also a little bit obvious, but it does look a little odd, at least during the day, and even more so than other fully lumed dials. However, at night, that's where this one really shines for the lume nuts. And as one, I love that this design is one that from the ground up, they designed it to do just this, to be a lume spectacle for all. And part of that is that they also use the best lume available to them, either grade A or grade X, depending on which color they were using. And by doing that, it really paid off for them. Because as you can see in my longevity test, every part of it lasts a good long while. The dial, the hands, the indices, the bezel, they all last longer than a standard Seiko diver. Which again is something I'm really glad to see. Because nothing is sadder than when a brand does some sort of cool lume design and it blinks out almost instantly. I've seen this countless times before. And here, they went all in and it pays off. Before we move on, I do want to talk a little bit more about the movement. Because the VH31 is an interesting choice for this, and I'm not really sure it's the best choice. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not anti-quartz by any means. I think my record stands on that. And I actually like seeing watches with the VH31 movement in them. Because even though it is a slower tick rate than a precisionist, it still keeps folks from pulling their hair out when the second hand doesn't line up. And it also makes a great watch to give to non-watch collectors. Over the years, I've given my father-in-law a couple of watches with a VH31 in it, and he loves wearing them. He wears them all the time, because it's cooler than a normal quartz watch, and he doesn't have to constantly fiddle with it. So on one hand, that makes this a really cool, very accessible watch for a lot of people, including non-watch collectors, and I think that's a big thing to stress. But at the same time, I feel like this is a watch that is really designed from the ground up for lume nuts, who are overwhelmingly watch enthusiasts. And for better or worse, watch enthusiasts are more inclined to want automatic over any quartz, regardless of what that quartz is, despite some of my videos even trying to argue against that. So when I look at this and see the VH31 movement, it kind of helps it, but also kind of hurts it at the same time. As for the bracelet, it's mostly good with a little could be better thrown in. So it's an oyster style bracelet. There are male end links extending out the effective lug to lug slightly, but like I said, I found it to be pretty comfortable. However, after that, it is followed up by good, solid, fully articulating links that are secured by screws, as well as a really good milled clasp. Now, compared to the case, the edges of the bracelet are maybe a little bit sharper, but it's not too bad, and I think good enough for the $500 price point. And we'll talk a little bit more about price in a second. So, like I said, it's mostly good. And the thing is, if I had seen this bracelet on this watch at this price like 4 or 5 years ago, which on this one I probably did, that'd kind of be the end of this. I really wouldn't have anything more to say. But the thing is, a lot's happened in the last few years, and especially when it comes to bracelets. And us watch enthusiasts have become really spoiled with good quick release end links and on-the-fly adjustment systems on milled clasps. Not only at this price point, but even less. And those little upgrades, those little amenities, they make life and the experience of wearing these watches so much easier and enjoyable. And that's missing here, which does hit the value argument a little. And especially for those, again, that love the idea of this, but don't want a quartz VH31 movement. Now, personally, I think the $500 price point is a little bit on the high side. But when you consider the uniqueness of the design, the bespoke nature of the dial and the handset, plus the good quality lume here, which doesn't come cheap, while I think it is a little bit high, I still think it's within reason. And especially for a good, solid, robust, assembled in the USA watch. And that's really the bottom line here. Fully lumed dials aren't for everyone. They really are this niche thing that are for those that just love lume and love basking in the crazy glow of it at night. And this has that, with a cool, interesting twist. Something like a Wise Hitman or a Signum Cuda fully lumed will still outshine this one, or outlast it. But at the same time, I think this one might be cooler. And a lot of lume nuts are going to be willing to pay just a little bit of a premium for something like that. And if that's you, go check it out. Now, as usual, let me know your thoughts on this one down below, as well as your thoughts on fully lumed dials. Do you love them? Do you hate them? Do you just kind of ignore them as some sort of gimmick? Let me know. And as always, you guys know what to do down below. Like, comment, subscribe, all that stuff. I'm Shane, this is Roll to Time, and I'll see you next time.